in person.
Gosh, I feel like taking the microphone and doing karaoke.
Fire me.
All in person, telephone, and other telephone and other electronic. I just want to read some spiel because we're going to have 3 of them.
Hi, everybody.
Hey,
Hello, Madeline.
I just sent Carrie a panicked message to say I don't have the Zoom, but I did. I found it.
They all email me and express comment.
Larry, my sympathy on your brother's passing.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
I was sorry to see that in the paper.
It added a whole new dimension to this strange time.
I'll say, I'm sure it did.
Yeah, that was a shame. How close were you guys in age, Larry?
He was 66. I'm 61.
Okay.
So,
Kelsey, are you ready?
You have a huge family.
yes, 9 of us. It's
Okay,
quite a
get
group
started
growing
here.
up.
What'd you say?
Good afternoon. Welcome to the May 27th, 2020 City of Detroit Lakes Special City Council meeting. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute 12.29I, as the mayor declared and the city council consented to a local emergency declaration at a special city council meeting held on March 18th, 2020. And now pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.021, it is hereby found necessary that in-person meetings of the city council may not be practical or prudent due to the COVID-19 health pandemic and the peacetime emergency declared by Governor Walz. Therefore, today's meeting is being held through in-person, telephone, and other electronic means without all members of the public or city officials present at the regular physical location. These proceedings are being live streamed through YouTube to meet the requirements of Minnesota Statute 13D.021. So at this time, I'll call the meeting to order, and I will begin the meeting by doing a roll call vote of the council members. And I'll just read the alderman's last names. Wenner.
Here.
Freeman. Here. Marks Erickson.
Here.
Boki. Here. Josephson. Here. Imholt. Yes. Bly.
Here.
Suki.
Yes.
Okay, there's just one topic on the agenda today, and that's consideration to approving temporary expansion permits. We'll end up having a couple of different motions, but at this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to our city administrator, Kelsey Clem, to give us some background on the expansion permit requests. Kelsey?
Mayor and council, just a little bit of background. So on May 13th, the governor signed a new executive order issuing what was deemed the kind of the safely reopening Minnesota's economy, or the Stay Safe Minnesota executive order. part of that executive order was deeming that restaurants and bars were going to be allowed to be open on June 1st, pending further guidance, which was then issued last week, last Wednesday, the 20th. The governor put out that guidance, about an 8-page guidance on restaurant and bars on how they can reopen June 1st. But one of the main criteria to that is it still prohibits any indoor seating. The only thing that's allowed starting June 1 is outdoor seating up to 50 people, still have to abide by the 6 feet of social distancing. With that, I think we all started kind of scrambling because we knew there was going to come requests from our bars and restaurants who don't have existing patio spaces or existing outdoor seating on how they're going to reopen and meet that requirement. So that's really the purpose of the special council meeting today, is to address those requests that we received. We've heard from many. We've reached out to all of our liquor license holders to see what it is that they were requesting. And ultimately, we put that all on the spreadsheet. I think Carrie's going to try to put that up on the screen. So each of the requests, there might be different elements or different approvals involved. Some of them require a temporary premises expansion permit, and that deals with our liquor licenses. So let me explain that. With an on-sale liquor license, when they submit that liquor application to the city, it defines what their service area is. In most cases, it's the building. Some places it's the building and the patio, or some building and contiguous space next to the building. So what the expansion permit allows you to do is take what was normally approved and expand it, maybe in this case, into a parking lot or possibly into some other public space, including a sidewalk space. We've always had some sidewalk cafe permits that we've issued in the past. You'll see one of the requests too also gets into the right-of-way. So then we also are doing some things with the right-of-way. The ones that are going into their parking lots, again, some cases it might just be the expansion permit, but there's also a zoning element to that too, because the parking spaces are all deemed based upon our zoning ordinance of requiring so many parking spaces. So for them to be setting up, we're asking the council to also basically give a temporary reprieve of what that zoning rules are. So with that, I think I'll just go through all the requests so everyone kind of understands it, and feel free to just ask questions as we go along. Brig Taps and Taste, basically they're looking for an expansion permit to expand with 2 tables on the back sidewalk by the patio and 3 tables on the front sidewalk. Again, city staff recommendation is to approve that as requested. China Buffet, we did not receive a request. Chinese Dragon, they're located in the Washington Square Mall. Last Friday, Sean delivered some additional picnic tables over to the mall for their carry-out users to use. What we're requesting there is basically a zoning permit and expansion permit for them to expand out onto their sidewalk to those tables for service, and potentially also expanding into the parking lot at the mall on the other side of Lake Avenue. Part of the problem with the max 50 person rule is it just takes a lot of space to be able to fit seating in for 50 people if you're trying to meet the 6-foot social distancing. So their plan is to start with the sidewalk, but we're looking for council approval to at least give them the option to move into the parking lot if needed.
Kelsey, I've got a question on that 50 people rule. Is that for all businesses, even like a Long Bridge where they have great ground, 50 people regardless of how much space they have?
The executive order is a max of 50 regardless of business size or business makeup.
Okay, thank you.
Kelsey, quick question on the mall parking lot there to the west. That's city parking, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
So the Chinese Dragon one is going to mirror Don Pablo's request. Basically the same request. They want to use those tables that are on the sidewalk and then potentially expand over to the parking lot.
My question is, would they each have their own separate area, or would it be combined?
They'd have to have their own separate area, because part of the rules I didn't explain in the in the reopening is, if a restaurant's going to have table service up to that max 50, there's other requirements that they have to meet. One of them is they have to do reservations. They have to be able to document who is actually eating there. So each business, in this case, Don Pablo's would have an area designated for them, and Chinese Dragon would have their own area designated for them.
Not, I didn't see Pizza Hut on here, so were they not part of that?
Pizza Hut currently is not requesting any additional dine-in seating. They're just going to stick with takeout. Next on the list is El Loro. Again, they're seeking basically an expansion permit. Their request is to approve some additional seating in the grass area in front of their business along Westlake Drive. The only thing that we can't approve there is there was talk about them actually putting concrete in and doing a concrete patio around the front. They're at their max for impervious surface, so the recommendation is approve the expansion permit, but they would just have to set up the tables in the grass or potentially in the parking lot. Gloria was just pointing out, like Spitfire, some of them aren't on here with a request because several of them have an existing patio. So like Spitfire has an existing patio already included in their premise permit. So they're not seeking any additional approvals. Okay. Holiday Inn, they're proposing to put in some tents in their parking lot. So they're requesting an expansion permit and a zoning permit. Recommendations to approve as requested. Hub 41 is, this one's a little bit unique. They're actually looking at also the possibility of utilizing their food truck. There's that grass parking area that Fairfield Inn has, and that's where they would potentially set up their food truck. And then they're also looking for an expansion permit for Hub 41 into the front of their business. And the recommendations prove that as requested. The VFW is requesting an expansion permit. They own the property immediately south of the VFW. There's a vacant lot there, and they're looking at doing a patio space in that vacant lot. They're also requesting some, the city has almost 40 picnic tables that we've offered up to these businesses that we'll deliver if needed. So they're requesting, they actually requested 25 picnic tables, but staff recommendations only 10 because again, they're supposed to stay under that 50. So providing them 25 tables really would be contrary to that. So the recommendations to approve the patio extension and an additional 10 tables for them.
Mayor, the picnic tables are those ones that are in addition to the ones that are already in the park?
Yeah, we have a kind of a stockpile that we use for different events. So we're not taking them out of the park. Those are our stockpile. We have the American Legion, basically looking for a expansion permit into their parking lot and some city picnic tables, and we would recommend that approval. La Barista, Lakeside, Longbridge, we don't have a request from them at this time. Northside Bar and Cafe, they're looking for an expansion permit into the patio space directly behind their building, and we would approve that as requested. Roasted, again, Roasted is a little bit of a unique request. Again, we've done sidewalk cafes into the sidewalk. They are requesting to get into the parking spaces on Washington Avenue. Specifically, they're requesting closing off of the parking spaces immediately in front of their building and to the north, up to the north property line of the, I call it the yoga studio. It used to be the yoga studio in there, and I'm not sure what's in there now. It's about 45 feet from the crosswalk north. They are proposing some sort of structure where they would actually build a platform and a railing around the outside of that platform. The staff recommendation is to approve basically that expansion permit and that right-of-way permit. I did have a conversation with county representatives last Friday, and they didn't see an issue with it. So again, there's other things like insurances and stuff that we'll still have to get from them, but at this point, we'd be seeking council approval to close off those two, I shouldn't say two parking stalls, but the parking stalls immediately in front of Roasted and of the former yoga studio.
Kelsey, do you know what's in the business to the north, the old yoga studio? Is there any retail in there right now?
In the old yoga studio?
Yeah,
I don't think there's anything in there
I
right now.
can't recall anything.
So I did ask Roasted, the applicant, to reach out to them
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that they were okay with this, and I haven't heard anything back.
Okay. I'm definitely not opposed to it. I would definitely want the county to sign off on it, being it's their road. But also looking at the rest of these, it looks like they're all using either their own existing parking lot or the city parking lot. Would Roasted be opposed to putting it out the back door?
They're pretty tight right onto the alley. They'd have to go into the parking lot across the alley.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, obviously, just the way they're set up with the garage door in the front,
Yep.
I don't think that'd be their
Okay.
first option. One of the things I should mention too is, they asked about the city building a platform, and I would not recommend the city getting into building the platform or providing tables. That's something that they're going to have to do.
The yoga studio is under remodel right now.
Okay.
So there's no one in there.
I was just saying, I know they vacated. I just didn't know if anything else. Thank you.
Kelsey, I've got a question talking about parking space out in front of these businesses. What would happen if there was an accident where a car went into that table area? Who would be liable, with the business or the city?
So we would ask the business to provide, with the extension of their premises, an expansion of their general liability policy and list the county and the city as additionally insured. So we would have some additional coverage through their insurance first and foremost. One of the benefits of this particular location is there's a node right by Roasted because that's where the crosswalk is. So it is sheltered from the vehicle traffic by the node being there. The one complication is there's a handicap parking spot right in front of Roasted. So we're going to have to move that handicap spot probably on the other side of the crosswalk if this is approved. Sandbar has existing patio space that they're going to use. Sapphire is looking for a zoning permit, expansion permit into their parking lot. Staff would recommend as requested. Shorewood Pub, Fireside, the Lodge. Well, let me back up here. Shorewood Pub and the Fireside, they're using existing patio space. The Lodge, we did not receive a request from. Voyager Lane still can't be open, so there's really no request at this point from them. Zorba's, there's no request because they have existing patio space. Shorty's Cafe, they do not have liquor. They don't serve liquor, but they're basically just looking for a zoning permit so they can move into their parking lot, use some of the parking spaces for tables and a tent. And then Main Street Cafe, we have yet to receive a request. So the request to the council would be to approve these expansion permits through October 31st. That's typically what we do with our sidewalk cafes. Mother Nature usually kind of takes care of the issue after October 31st. That's why we usually do it that length. And there is a very lengthy motion on the bottom that basically would approve all those different permits in one way or another. And it also provides the city administrator some leeway that you're basically approving the expansion permit, but it has to be adjusted a little bit. I have the flexibility to make those adjustments a little bit. And what they submitted to us for a plan today, they decide, well, maybe that expansion permit isn't going to work, in the sidewalk next to us. Maybe we got to go on the other sidewalk behind our building. It would provide me with the flexibility to approve that. There's also a caveat in there about charitable gambling. With the expansion to outdoor seating, the state has deemed that they can also expand their charitable gambling, pull tabs, bingo, those type of things, into that outdoor seating area. I had one request from a charitable gambling manager that the city would approve that extension. We weren't sure if we need to do that, but we thought we'd cover our bases, and that's included in the motion is the expansion of that charitable gambling into those.
Hello?
Charlie, you wrote the motion. What did I?
Well, I just wanted to emphasize a couple of additional things with the motion. You'll note that the language says that the
Yeah.
expansion has to comply
sorry.
with the current
I can't.
and,
I can't do it at this time. I'm in a meeting already.
okay, the current and updated Minnesota governor's emergency orders and follow the guidance from state agencies. And the reason that we have that in there is that the latest guidance from the Department of Employment and Economic Development is 8 pages long, and it has really detailed requirements for restaurants on reopening. And we didn't want to include 8 pages in the motion, but the permits are going to be issued on condition that the businesses comply with those required guidance from the state agencies, as well as any new executive or emergency orders that come out. I mean, we are at about 60 of those orders now, so the orders have made some changes and seem to be coming out on a regular basis. And then the other thing that I'd like to point out is that a couple of these applications have requested tents. I think under the existing current guidance, a canopy is acceptable, but that walls on the tents would not be acceptable because that would make it an enclosed space. The state might provide us with some different guidance in the future, but at least as currently stated, when it says tent in here, the idea is that it would be a covered seating area, but not an enclosed seating area. Because an enclosed seating area, I think, would violate the existing governor's orders.
Charlie, can I ask you a question then? Because that was what I was gonna ask, was about the tent. So will we be better off saying canopy instead of tent in this?
Yeah, again, I think that the motion says, it gives the discretion, and at least it's written to give the discretion to the city administrator to make that determination. But the current interpretation now is canopy, and that it would not be a tent. And so, yeah, to the extent that the requests indicate a request for a tent, I think it would be better to clarify that that means a canopy, but not an enclosed space.
Kelsey, do you want to talk about the fees or?
I've got another question before we go to fees though, but noticing what a lot of people do and take out and pick up and so forth, and they might go to the beach or city park or wherever it may be, it seems like we're short of garbage cans for all these boxes. And even with some of these businesses, they don't seem to have enough garbage cans. I just wonder, we should make part of this that they have to supply adequate garbage cans for all these boxes and just everything that's going along with pickup. If we could make that part of the motion also, then.
Actually, Ron, I can respond to that. The existing ordinance that we have, and take a little credit for the Liquor Control Committee last year. I mean, we didn't realize we were going to need this, but we're one of the few cities in the state that actually has a temporary expansion permit as an ordinance. And our ordinance already says that the permit holders are going to be required, let me read it, to provide proper containers for collection of waste and trash and responsible for keeping the outdoor area clean of garbage, trash, or litter associated with the operation of the business and responsible for cleanup and repair of the sidewalk.
Okay,
So that's already in there, and the idea with the way the language in the motion is that Kelsey will have the discretion to make that determination. So if it appears that 2 garbage cans might be necessary, he'll have the ability to make that as a request.
Well, I'm just thinking part of the permit, when they get their permits, we could tell them they need these garbage cans, so everybody's in tune, and maybe even as the city, we're gonna need to put out more garbage cans too with
Correct.
after the weekend and stuff.
And we will also be attaching the current guidance from the Department of Economic, or Employment and Economic Development to it, because we want to make sure that everybody is aware of what are fairly detailed requirements from the state in order for them to do this.
Very good, thank you.
Kelsey, do you want to, go ahead, Bruce.
One question yet too, if I may. So assuming we pass this motion, and I actually see Brooke back there with La Barista, but if we pass this motion based on what's here, if other people that are on that haven't applied yet, are we also assuming that that would be with your discretion to okay that?
Mayor and council, I'll let Charlie chime in on this. The problem about the expansion permits is pretty specific in our ordinance that the city council has to approve those.
Part of the reason that we made, that Carrie and staff called around was because it has to be issued by the city council. So the next go-around to do this would be at the regular city council meeting in June.
Okay, so I think that's important to get that information out if there's somebody out there that's on the list that hasn't applied.
I'm certain that we'd be willing to consider these other ones. Had they responded and requested, we would have now. But the ordinance says that the council has to issue the permits, which is why this is a rather lengthy motion, because we wanted to give the city administrator the discretion to make sure that all of the notches were met with regard to the permits, but the council has to issue the permit to the business.
Now, Carrie, were you able to reach most of the businesses? Okay, so that's good to know anyway.
Okay, Kelsey, talk about the fees.
Yeah,
now.
Mayor and council, so there's kind of three motions that you maybe want to consider. One is that lengthy motion at the bottom of the spreadsheet that would basically approve the permits. The second one is there was a request to waive the fees for these permits.
And that fee is what?
Our temporary expansion permits are normally $100. So that would likely be a separate motion if you would wish to consider that. The third item is there's also a list of some of the transient merchant applications that we received. A couple of them we had prepared for the June 9th council meeting, but since we're having the special council meeting, we can act on those transient merchant licenses tonight. That'd be beneficial to get those approved earlier than later. So that would be a third item.
Okay, is there any more questions anybody has before I ask the Liquor and Gambling Control Committee Chairman Dan Josephson to introduce these motions? Any questions?
Well, yeah, can I clarify that last one on the transient merchant? Are you making a motion that we waive those fees?
No.
Okay. We're just approving the,
It'd be approving the transient merchant fees subject to their full application and fee submittal,
gotcha, okay.
similar
Further
to what we do
questions?
normally.
Somebody have a question on the screen? Okay, I don't hear any further questions, so Dan, would you go ahead and take these three motions, please? Wherever you are, there he is.
Sure, I'll start out with the first one, and I thank Charlie for the lengthy motion, and I thank Carrie for the small print.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Brooke Wenzel with La Barista and Fork on the Road Food Truck. I want to first off thank you guys for the kickback for part of our liquor permit. Very appreciated.
Can we use the word kickback? That's
Well,
not good.
we appreciate the help. Really, thank you. My biggest concern, having La Barista and having the city-owned tables in front of us, a lot of people have the perception that those are our tables. I just want to know what guidance we have. Like, I can't take reservations out there. I also can't have people from other businesses using those. So I was just wondering guidance on that, on who's responsible for patrolling those tables.
Mayor and council, my understanding that those are public tables, and La Barista has not done an expansion permit, so they're not serving on those tables. So those are basically the city's responsibilities, just like any other public seating elsewhere in the community. So there's no reservations. It's basically just available for anyone who wants to use them.
Okay, perfect. And then I'd guess, I know you said in the motion that you would have some flexibility with working with the businesses after the motion is passed. And I guess we would probably want to put some tables currently in our curbside dining if need be. I mean, as you all know, this is hard on small businesses, especially restaurants that rely heavily, our business especially, since it's snowbirds, it's older people, and they're just not coming anymore because they want to sit and converse and gather. So I was just wondering if there's still that flexibility with you, if come, June 7th, when nothing is still lifted, if we could expand our tables onto the street.
If I could bite on that a couple of things. Brooke, I think, first of all, I was surprised when I didn't see you requesting anything, because I think if you requested, part of this motion is not necessarily a liquor serving outdoors, but it is to be able to put tables alongside the building and to the sidewalk. And if you wanted nothing more than that, at least in the permit or in the present situation, I think that the council would be open to just approving it. I do want to emphasize that the takeout, and I don't know how important this is for the businesses, but as I read the statute that allowed for on-sale liquor license holders to allow off sales, okay, along with your takeout, I believe that expires on May 31st. And so my construction of that set of orders and that statute means that effective May 31st, the businesses that were allowed to allow off-sale liquor sales with their takeout will no longer be allowed to do that, because the governor's closure order, even though it's still limited, it is expired. I mean, we're not closed anymore, okay? And so I don't know how that fits with your business plan. It's none of my business, but I think that, you should be aware of that, at least. And then the other thing to remember is that there's a city council meeting on June 9th. And so if you discover between now and then that you want to make some request, I'm certain that they would be.
Okay, perfect. And I was reached out by Carrie and I talked to Kelsey about it. I would like to put tables on the street if that's an option. And I also know that in order to serve liquor outside, we would need a cafe permit, and I don't have money for another permit. So we will not be serving liquor. I mean, we will be having people coming, buying their food and sitting outside, but those aren't my tables, so I'm not sure how I'm supposed to take reservations for them.
So Brooke, do you want to add your business to the list and have some tables?
I mean, it'd be great if we could put some on home. I don't think any of us, especially a small coffee shop, knows what the demand is going to be for those tables. There are people using them right now, getting their to-go food and sitting out there, but those tables, someone ordering from Main Street can come over and sit down, and I don't want to be liable for the tables if they're not mine. I guess it's kind of a cloudy area with those
But you would
particular
put
tables.
you would put some of your own tables out there, right?
There already are some tables there that were put there by the city, picnic tables.
When we request those tables, the city brings them on our request. Now, them are our responsibility. We will lease those.
Yeah.
Once that's approved, right? So if she requests a table, we put them out there. At that point, under her request, they are our responsibility.
Right.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
Except the 4 that are part of the city, that's the gray area.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
I
Brooke,
want people to be able to come and dine with us and give us business, or we have like a 1-month shelf life.
No, my question, Mayor, if I can, didn't mean to interrupt there, but my question to Brooke is, we're providing picnic tables to businesses. You just heard that. Those tables are already out in front of your business. Could we make part of this motion that those tables could be used by you for reservation purposes? Because they're in front of your business. I was like Charlie, I was quite frankly surprised that you were not on the list.
I did talk to Kelsey and Carrie on the phone, so I'm not sure why I'm not on the list, but
Bruce,
I don't know how I'm gonna have someone order a cup of coffee and sit down and ask them for their name, their phone number. I mean, per the governor's guidelines.
Bruce, you might have trouble there because that is for public seating and you might have people that get a carry out and go and they've been doing a lot of that sitting out in front there. So that might be kind of tough to tell people they can't sit there when it is public seating out in front there.
No, I understand that, Ron, but I suspect that you're gonna find that when all these tables are in the parking lot, that there's gonna be people sitting down there irregardless of whether. they've
Well,
reserved.
I don't think so. It says you have to have reservations. They're gonna be sitting at those tables. Isn't that right, Charlie?
Well, Bruce, I think Brooke's point is well taken, is that if you read the 8 pages of the governor's guidance, this is not just a couple of tables out there that you just have. I mean, you're required, like Brooke says, to have reservations. You're required to have an enclosed area, a little roped off area for your business, okay? So they're not just generally accessible to the public. I would say that we could have a permit for Brooke that would have her put tables out, maybe her own tables, along the edge of the mall, assuming the mall is willing to allow you to do that. But bring the tables in at night. I mean, I think that that's what the temporary expansion permit was intended to do in the first place. If you note, the language of our ordinance says you're supposed to bring it in at night. Anyway, I just throw that out there, but it is not as simple as just saying, well, there's some tables and we can tell her that she can use those. Because if she's using those, Jason says, you got to police them. That's part of what the governor's order says, not what our, that's not our language in our temporary expansion ordinance, but it is the governor's guidance on operating. And there is a long list of requirements that these businesses will have to meet. Whether those are fair or right is, debatable, but we didn't make those rules, but I think we're required to make sure that the businesses, at least to the best of our ability, follow those rules.
And I totally agree with your point. I just don't know how, it's going to be it's a retraining thing for my employees. I get that, but I think we're going to get some, and again, I don't know, but for the person who comes and orders a cup of coffee and then sits down, I don't know if I'm supposed to obviously ask for their name and address and like their phone number.
Yeah, and we don't really know either. You can read the thing as well as we can. It does say reservations.
Yeah, I get that.
I'm guessing that reservations could be taken at the door as well as by phone.
Okay.
But I guess to me, when I saw you weren't on the list, I thought the safe bet for you to do would be to request, if nothing else, even if you don't want to be able to serve alcohol outdoors, at least request that that Kelsey have the authority to allow you to place tables into the sidewalk right away, just so that you're on the list for that. And then
Yeah,
if
and
you
the
decide by June that you want to do the liquor expansion permit, you'd have to make that request for the June meeting.
Okay, and the tables are there. The tables were brought by the city. And if that's going to be our roped off area, I guess.
You'd have to police them if you put the
Okay,
tables out there.
then that's what I'm requesting, then a roped off area around us, expansion permit.
Yeah, I guess that's really the question, Brooke, is do you want designated tables for La Barista
Yes.
that you're gonna police and take reservations on? And if you want that, other than just public seating, then we should add you to the list.
Correct.
Okay.
Otherwise, you gotta wait till June 9th.
Yeah, I can't wait any longer. So I guess are those 4 tables then that are technically the city's?
Why don't we
gonna
add
do?
you to
Why
the
don't we-
list, Brooke, and then if you decide not to, then you don't have to do it.
Okay, perfect.
How's
You
that?
have your choice then.
I
Okay.
don't,
And then the follow-up is, I think that there's gonna be another motion to not charge for the expansion permit when you asked about another fee.
Yeah, I was just talking about the sidewalk cafe permit. I mean, we don't sell a ton of liquor in La Barista. We have a liquor license to cater weddings primarily, so I don't want that permit right now.
and that's the permit, we would be waiving the fee
We're
for.
waiving the fee, so
Waiving
just
the
don't
fee.
Well,
let.
then I'll take the permit. Sir. I'm just being
I
honest
mean,
with you.
we're assuming the council is going to approve the fee waiver.
Then yes,
I'm-
I'll
you know,
take the expansion fee or the permit for free and the sidewalk cafe for free, and that'd be great.
Okay.
While we're muddying the waters, I gotta ask one more question.
Yeah.
You mentioned the parking space.
I guess if I can figure out how to get some more tables out there, I would be fine with not having parking spaces. My only thing is I know that the mall's not gonna let us drag in and out tables every day.
Okay.
I
Because,
just, no, she's not gonna do that.
because while I'm asking for permission here, that's, if you think you want that parking space
I'll
designated
just-
for seating, we should throw that into the
Put it on it.
Okay,
It
group
would
here.
seem to make sense for you to ask for it, because if you decide not to do it,
perfect,
assuming they waive the fee, you know,
wonderful.
then at least you'd have the authority to do it.
Yeah,
Use it if you need it.
okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so
Question on that, as long as we're still muddying the waters on that. If Brooks' request is to take the parking spot, are we talking Washington Avenue now that has to go back to the county? Or are we talking Holmes that is city and we can do that?
I was thinking Holmes because again,
Okay.
remember you got that seating hub right in front of La Barista, but you
Yep.
do have space along Holmes. You got a couple of parking spots right outside her side door,
Nope,
which
that's,
would make sense.
just wanted to clarify.
And
Thank you.
this motion would give Kelsey the ability to make that adjustment.
Perfect, thank you.
okay, so everybody understands that we're adding La Barista to this list, right?
Yep.
Okay. So was there anyone else in the audience that had something that they wanted to ask or bring up? If not, Dan, do you want to go ahead and introduce that first motion?
Sure, as long as everybody's sitting down.
Sorry.
It's a long one. I saw it up on the screen. Print is a lot smaller here, but I'd like to make a motion to approve the closure of street parking and other parking spaces in the public right-of-way, waiver of minimum on-site parking requirements, and the use of sidewalk right-of-way as determined necessary and advisable by the city administrator for the operation of restaurants and for the issuance of permits for the temporary expansion of on-sale beer, wine, and intoxicating liquor licensed premises under section 702.12 of the following named license holders, including the ability to conduct charitable gambling within the controlled premises upon condition of the determination of the city administrator that the expansion meets the requirements of the city ordinances and the restrictions of state law and the applicable or application, and the application is complete, sufficient, and will be utilized on conditions acceptable to the city administrator, that the expansion will comply with current and updated Minnesota governor's emergency orders and follow guidance of state agencies, and that the approved closure, waiver, permission to the use of the right-of-way and premises expansion terminates and is eliminated no later than October 31st, 2020, without any right to renewal thereafter. And in addition to the ones listed here, adding in La Barista and do we want to add in the canopy versus
I
tent?
just want it to be clear in the motion that if they're requesting a tent, it's a canopy. It cannot have, at least under current governor's guidance, it cannot have sidewalls. If that were to change, then that could change.
Sure, so I'll clean that layer E's up into, it needs to be a canopy versus a sidewall tent. And I so move.
Did I hear a second?
Second, yeah.
Bruce? Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Well, do attorneys believe in periods?
No, they do.
No, did I grammatically error here?
Discussion.
One point of clarification is in enclosure 4 walls, Charlie. And the reason I'm asking is like, if everybody can see this coming down the pipe, if you got a tent in a parking lot, possibly by a lake, now you got a breeze blowing off the lake.
I think this motion provides for the discretion of the city administrator to make that judgment.
Perfect. Thanks, Kelsey.
Further discussion? Okay, I'm gonna take a roll call vote. So all in favor, Wenner,
Aye.
Zeman,
Aye.
Marks, Erickson.
I read her lips.
Jamie, are you there?
She said aye. I read her lips.
Okay.
Sorry, I was muted. Aye.
Okay, Boki,
Aye.
Josephson,
Aye.
Imholt,
Yes.
Bly,
Aye.
Suki.
Aye.
Motion carries. Dan?
Second, I would like to make a motion to waive the expansion permit fees for all the listed establishments, and I so move.
Second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to waive the expansion permit fees for all the various businesses requesting an expansion. So again, we'll do a discussion. Again, I'll do a roll call vote. I'll go backwards this time. Suki,
Aye.
Bly,
Aye.
Imholt,
Yes.
Josephson,
Aye.
Bulkey,
Aye.
Marks, Erickson,
Aye.
Zeman,
Aye.
Wenner.
Aye.
The motion passes. Dan?
And my third motion is to approve the transient merchant license applications for the following 4 food trucks: Woodfire Foods, M&M Enterprises, Spanky's, Mini Donuts by Denise. And I so move.
Second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the transit merchant for the 4 food trucks mentioned in Dan's motion. Discussion?
Yes, Your Honor.
Bruce?
So based on our last council meeting where we had the flat fee and then the per day, these are all matching up with that. Okay.
Further discussion?
Brooks got a question back there.
So you have a question and a request. So as far, okay, I'm gonna call on our city administrator to field those.
I guess, Mayor, Council, both those questions. Yeah, if there's someone witnesses a transient merchant in town that is selling that don't have a license or suspects they don't have a license, call us City Hall and we'll research it and find out if they have one or not. This year, you certainly, there's potential to see more trucks in town, but unless we know about it, there's no way we can really go after it and enforce it. Secondly, the ordinance is very clear on the prohibition that says transit merchants are not to sell from city right-of-way or city property. So, except for when you see those special event permits, whether it's the street fair or art in the park, those type of things, water carnival. Otherwise, the ordinance prohibits transient merchants from selling from city right-of-way or city streets. So I don't know, Charlie.
I think we would need to change the ordinance, which we can't do right now. And I'm not sure that's advisable to change. I mean, I understand the question. I understand the need for the request, but Kelsey's correct. It is directly contradictory to the city ordinances. So without a change in the ordinances, I don't see how we can do that.
So the first question, if somebody calls into City Hall and says, I'm aware of a food truck that's not licensed operating in the city, they can call into the city and they would remain anonymous. Is that correct?
Certainly. Yep.
Well, okay.
That's a long, but
I don't want to go into a long discussion of that, but just
It's
to
a
say
long
that, one of the ways that we enforce those ordinances is through the criminal justice system. And in that instance, the caller may not remain anonymous, may not. Okay, so
Well, then they shouldn't say their name then.
we would still have to go out and investigate.
we would still investigate.
Is my point.
Okay, well, as far as the food trucks being, did you, Brooke, did you mean parked or parked and selling food? So, yeah, you'd have to request that, call Kelsey, request that. It would have to go on to our city council agenda. Would it take 2 readings, Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem, is that it's an amendment to an ordinance that it's a direct contradiction to the ordinance. I mean, I don't want to be hard on this, but, we have an ordinance that allows for these temporary expansion permits. So we have some flexibility there. But it's very difficult to grant flexibility that's directly contrary to one of our ordinances without changing it. And the way that ordinances are passed in Detroit Lakes is a first reading and a second reading. That isn't necessarily a 2-month process, as you know, but it does require a first and a second reading.
I've got a question, because I know the restaurants are in a lot of trouble right now. They all have invoices to
Ron,
pay.
can you speak up? I got this.
They all
thing
have
going.
invoices to pay and nobody's coming in. But and I know there's an exception, but now we're talking about city streets, but are there any other places that are close to a city street? What could we have, like a parking lot, or what can we do to help these people that have these, like Brooks, in their operation? What can we do to help these people? Because it is serious. A lot of these people aren't going to, a lot of them probably won't be here next year. And so what can we do to help them with that? And I know we could do an ordinance thing tonight here and make the first motion for it, so we could have the second one here in June if we needed to. But what can we do to help them without going through all this, to help them with their need at this time? What can we do that would be as simple and easy? There's gotta be some plan out there.
I don't know as if, and I would defer to Charlie, but I don't know, because it's not on the agenda, we really couldn't
It's a
get
special
into an
meeting.
ordinance tonight, could we?
Yeah.
Mayor and council they can still, those who have transient merchant licenses can serve from private property. So it's just not public property. So, I mean, you see them set up at the thrift store or other private businesses, they can still do that. It's just public parking lots, public streets, devoid of some sort of special event permit where there's some other nonprofit group having something like Water Carnival. We have not, it's not allowed.
Brooks, have you
Yeah,
tried
Mayor.
working with a private business or concern? That's how you're doing it right now, but I mean, is that working for you a little bit, or? And see, that is one of the problems. We've got lots of restaurants where these guys pay taxes on, and that is, and you do too. I realize that, but that's part of the reason for this.
Bruce, did you have something?
Thank you,
wanted to-
Mayor. I've been waiting patiently. Yeah, I know we're getting off subject, so we need to focus back where we were. But I would probably say this, Brooke. First of all, I will make sure this is on the Public Works agenda for June 8th, and I'd encourage you to come, and maybe we can get a better definition of what's a special event, because that's what it hinges on. But maybe we can do something for you or other folks. The second thing is, you'll find me the one that pushes the most on the transient merchants that are not here in town and what you said, if you know that's happening, you have to call City Hall, because that's not what we want. We want people either here that are tax-paying residents like yourself, or they're paying that transient merchant in lieu of the property tax. So please help us enforce that.
So somebody could hypothetically call their council person, and council person could take it from there, right?
Sure. Yep.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? And this is to, yep,
This is Jamie.
Charlie?
It's a public parking.
But is it covered by their management agreement? It'd be a sublease of their management agreement. Maybe.
The short answer is I don't know. Okay, I mean, in general, it's a parking, it's a public parking, and so the answer would be no. But Kelsey points out that it might be in the management agreement, and I haven't memorized even one of those.
Why don't we do, as Councilman Imholt has suggested, he's gonna have this on his Public Works agenda, right, Bruce?
Yes.
So why don't we have that discussion there?
I think Jamie had a question.
Jamie, did you have a question?
Just a clarification, these approvals are subject to a completed application and payment of fees, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Further discussion? So I'll take a roll call vote. All in favor, Wenner,
Aye.
Zeman,
Aye.
Marks Erickson,
Hi.
Bulkey,
Aye.
Josephson,
Aye.
Imhold,
Yes.
Bly,
Aye.
Suki.
Aye.
The motion carries. The business of this council has come to a conclusion and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Good night, guys.
Bye, everybody.